I should have known something was wrong when Bryce ordered the most expensive wine at dinner and then spent 20 minutes explaining why I'd never make VP. The Barolo was still breathing when he leaned back in his chair like some discount Gordon Gekko and said, "Kate, you're brilliant with details, but leadership requires vision. You're more of a support player." Support player. Like I was benched in Little League instead of the woman who'd saved his quarterly projections 3 times running. I smiled the way you smile at a dentist who's about to drill without Novocaine and nodded like his wisdom was carved on stone tablets. Meanwhile, I was mentally calculating how many unpaid weekends I'd worked to make his vision look less like finger painting and more like strategy. Bryce Whitman, our newly minted Chief Revenue Officer, had the kind of confidence that comes from failing upward through 3 startups and landing at Meridian Solutions because his golf buddy sat on our board. He'd been here exactly 4 months. I'd been here 5 years, building the client retention program that kept us afloat during the pandemic. But sure, tell me more about vision. By the way, since most people consume this content like drive-through coffee and vanish without a trace, smash that subscribe button. It feeds the algorithm beast and keeps these workplace justice stories coming. Trust me, this one gets messy. I didn't argue. Didn't defend myself. Just let him finish his speech about how the C-suite needed disruptors, not administrators, while I sipped wine that cost more than most people's car payments. I was already 3 moves ahead, but he was still playing checkers. See, what Bryce didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Not just my wins, though there were plenty, but his failures. Every client he'd nearly lost with his innovative approaches. Every budget he'd blown on consultants who spoke in buzzwords and delivered PowerPoints that said nothing. Every meeting where he'd taken credit for strategies I'd developed and presented to him in neat little packages he could understand. I had receipts. Color-coded, time-stamped, cross-referenced receipts. That dinner ended with him picking up the check like some magnanimous patron of the arts, patting my shoulder, and saying, "Don't worry, Kate. There's always next year." I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked to my car with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd just been handed the murder weapon. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick. Not because I was actually ill, but because I needed time to execute what I was already calling Operation Checkmate. While Bryce was probably congratulating himself on putting me in my place, I was in my home office, building his professional obituary one spreadsheet at a time. First stop, our shared drive. Funny thing about being the support player, you have access to everything. Every file, every folder, every careless email Bryce had sent thinking nobody important was paying attention. I wasn't stealing. I was preserving. Preserving every instance where his visionary leadership had actually been my strategic planning with his signature stamped on top. The client presentation that saved the Patterson account? I had the original drafts, complete with my revision notes and his responses like, "Make it more synergistic." The cost-cutting initiative that earned him a board commendation? I had the email thread where I'd suggested it, and he'd replied, "Good idea, I'll present this to leadership." But my favorite was the smoking gun, a recording from our quarterly planning meeting where Bryce had literally said, "Kate's always got the numbers figured out. I just make them sound important." He'd meant it as a compliment. I heard it as a confession. While I was building my case, Bryce was busy digging his own grave. He'd started this new initiative, something about revolutionary client engagement protocols, which was really just him trying to fix something that wasn't broken. Our retention rates were at an all-time high, but that wasn't flashy enough for someone trying to make his mark. By Wednesday, 3 major clients had complained about the new protocols. By Friday, 2 had threatened to pull their contracts. And by Monday, when I returned to the office with my documentation complete and my strategy locked and loaded, Bryce was in full panic mode. "Kate," he called out as I walked past his office. "Thank God you're back. We have a situation with the Morrison account. They're saying something about inconsistent messaging." I paused in his doorway, watching him pace behind his desk like a caged executive. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loose, and there was a coffee stain on his shirt that told me he'd been stress-eating and working late. "Inconsistent how?" I asked, though I already knew. Morrison had been getting mixed signals ever since Bryce implemented his protocols, without consulting anyone who actually understood the account. "They want to meet. Tomorrow. They mentioned your name specifically." He looked at me like I was a life preserver in a sea of his own incompetence. I need you to handle this. I nodded slowly, like I was considering it. Of course. I'll take care of Morrison. What I didn't say was that I'd already spoken to Morrison. Yesterday. For 2 hours. Along with Patterson, Blackstone, and Chin Industries. Funny how quickly clients return your calls when you're the one who actually knows their business. The Morrison meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in the main conference room. At 1:45, I walked in to find Bryce already there, fidgeting with his presentation remote and practicing his opening lines. He smiled when he saw me, the kind of desperate smile people give their executioner. Morrison should be here any minute, he said. I've got the talking points ready. Just follow my lead and we should be fine. I sat down across from him and pulled out my tablet. Actually, Bryce, I think there might be a misunderstanding about this meeting. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Before I could answer, the conference room door opened. But it wasn't Morrison who walked in. It was Victoria Chen, our CEO, followed by 2 people I didn't recognize but whose expensive suits and serious expressions screamed legal counsel. Bryce went pale. Victoria? I thought this was the Morrison meeting. It was, Victoria said, taking a seat at the head of the table. Until Morrison called me directly yesterday, along with 3 other major clients. They had some interesting things to say about our account management practices. The blood drained from Bryce's face so fast I thought he might faint. I can explain. I'm sure you can, Victoria interrupted, then turned to me. Kate, would you mind walking us through the documentation you provided? I opened my tablet and began. Every email. Every revised proposal. Every client conversation where Bryce's revolutionary protocols had created confusion and frustration. I presented it all with the same calm professionalism I'd used in every meeting for the past 5 years, while Bryce sat beside me looking like he was watching his career get fed through a paper shredder. The best part? I didn't have to embellish anything. The facts spoke for themselves. Bryce had been so confident in his untouchability that he'd left a digital trail of incompetence spanning months. Every decision that had damaged client relationships. Every strategy session where he'd dismissed concerns. Every email where he'd taken credit for work he hadn't done. When I finished, the room was silent except for the sound of Bryce's rapid breathing. Victoria looked at him with the expression of someone who just discovered termites in the foundation. Bryce, she said slowly, I'm going to need you to clean out your office. HR will escort you out within the hour. He stammered. He pleaded. He even tried to blame me, saying I'd sabotaged him out of jealousy. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and Victoria had already made her decision. As security walked Bryce to the elevator, he caught my eye one last time. The look he gave me was pure venom, but underneath the anger, I saw something else, recognition. He finally understood that the support player had been playing a completely different game. That afternoon, Victoria called me into her office. I expected a conversation about interim leadership or damage control with the clients. Instead, she offered me Bryce's position. Kate, she said, I've been watching your work for years. I should have made this move sooner. The clients trust you. The team respects you. And frankly, after seeing how you handled this situation, I think you might be the best strategic mind we have in this company. I accepted, of course. Not because I'd wanted Bryce's job, I'd wanted justice. But sometimes, the universe has a sense of humor about these things. 6 months later, our client retention hit 98%, our highest ever. The team was thriving under leadership that actually understood the business. And Bryce? Last I heard, he was consulting, which is corporate speak for unemployed with a LinkedIn account. The moral of this story isn't about revenge. It's about documentation. It's about knowing your worth and having the evidence to prove it. It's about understanding that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply let incompetent people expose themselves while you quietly build an airtight case. They said I'd never be C-suite material. Turns out, I wasn't just C-suite material, I was their replacement plan all along. Thanks for sticking around for this one, Workplace Warriors. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about strategic career justice. Because trust me, there are plenty more where this came from.